Hello everyone and welcome to your Saturn placement. After doing Jupiter, I really wanted to get to this one, but of course, just takes time, like the lesson of Saturn. As someone who's kind of an optimist, I guess I would call myself, and I like to believe in the positive things and I kind of love Disneyland. The serious nature of Saturn was probably the last planet that I really delved into. But there's so much to learn here. Saturn is the realist. It's here to teach you that lifelong lesson. So welcome, my fellow masochists. You have made it to the harshness of reality. I'll make it as pleasant as possible. If you want some feel-good vibes, stop now and watch the Jupiter videos. Just kidding. Saturn is called malefic because it's a place of hardship. Hardships are not random. They're not just the gods laughing at us, or maybe they are, but they are there to teach us a lesson. All of these lessons throughout all of these years, over time, the long haul of Saturn will teach us mastery. So what started as one of your greatest weaknesses will become one of your greatest strengths. When I did the Jupiter videos, one of the comments was that since I presented Jupiter as a superpower, I should present Saturn as Kryptonite. I thought that was such a great idea. Now, I don't know much about the Superman comics, but I do know enough to know what Kryptonite is. If Superman, over time, builds up his immunity to Kryptonite, then that is exactly what Saturn is all about. I also got some criticism for having so much about the actual planet and not as much about the specific traits of your placement. So I'm going to put more in there. But to know about the planet itself is important because it teaches you what's the difference between having a Saturn in Scorpio versus a Saturn ascendant. And when I was first learning about astrology, that was probably the thing that confused me the most. So that is why I spend so much time. Saturn is the slow burn. It's the delayed effect. Usually this area is something that we care so much about, but it seems so unobtainable. And then when we finally get there, we will look back and say it's really worth the journey. This is an area that's going to require dedication, patience, and time. You might feel like your father figure, or God isn't bringing you anything in this area. Like you put so much effort and then it's just not rewarded like Jupiter is. You have to do all of the work, and it's true. There are no spiritual guides or beings that are going to give you that extra boost in this area. This is good old-fashioned blood, sweat, and tears. It's an area that has to be aged like a fine wine. There's also often a lot of shame, which is a huge obstacle. There's this inner voice, you shouldn't do this. Push and pull of something you want, but something you feel is shameful. And for some people, Saturn is mostly about getting past that kind of shame in that area. It won't be easy, but it will be worth it. So let's get into your Saturn placements. Saturn in Virgo. So the mantra that I have for you guys to tell yourself whenever you're being too hard on yourself, which might happen a lot, is I will seek perfection on my life's journey, knowing that it won't ever be perfect, but its lessons always will be. Every day I will dedicate a moment to align my body, mind, and soul. So that's it. You can stop watching. Just kidding. So Saturn is very at home with Earth sign placements, but that said, the Virgo placement can be a little tricky. Being an Earth sign placement means your work ethic is through the roof. Virgo is the sign of work, the daily grind, health, rituals, those little things of life, the details, and Saturn is about the big picture, the long-term goals. To you, work probably is life. The two are inseparable, and it might be really hard to have a meaning to life if you're not working on something. You are a perfectionist through and through. This gives you extreme positives in the area of reaching your goals, but there are some negatives. You are extremely talented when it comes to work, probably the best worker in a lot of situations. And because of this, you'll often reach your long-term goals quicker than other people would because of your almost impossible level of perfectionism. Nothing is ever good enough. You are so perfect at your work that are you too perfect? Is there such a thing? Well, here's where it gets a little out of control. You can be so self-sacrificing, giving everything of your body, mind, and soul, and putting it into your work that you are drained. And this is common for a Virgo placement, which is why they call this the martyr. And when you are burned out, you might just quit entirely. Or you could have an episode of 10 years where you feel depressed about the idea of taking on any long-term responsibilities. So it is really important that we put this perfectionism in perspective before it gets the best of you. It can sometimes be hard to see the overall picture with your laser-like detail perfection. And because Virgo is health, it is important to make sure to check in with your body and to check in with your spirit and to make sure that you're in alignment. So I would definitely recommend a daily something that gives you that, whether it is petting animals or meditating or swimming or whatever it is. Maybe a daily walk. A Virgo in Saturn has to remember to take a little bit of time away from their work-obsessed drive to make sure to not reach that point of exhaustion. While the day-to-day habits are what ultimately takes you into reaching your long-term goals, and you probably will not just reach a goal out of nowhere, it's probably a lot of effort that goes into everything great that you accomplish in this life. It can be easy for criticism, that's your own criticism or others, to have a paralyzing effect. Also, if there is something long-term that doesn't work out, it could be a divorce, it could be a job, it can be completely debilitating. If you feel failure because of that perfectionism, it can be really hard to come back from that. So that's why I gave you that mantra, because it's to be able to distinguish between having a perfectionism in your work ethic versus thinking that you have to always be perfect in order to have a good life. They're two very different things. Don't give up on your long-term goals if you hit a little bump in the road. As hard as it is to stop obsessing about all the details, always check in with that bigger picture. Maybe have somebody that is a good sounding board around you who just always gives you that larger perspective kind of advice. To say, hey, you know what? You've worked really hard today. Maybe take a break. Nothing is ever perfect, but when you strive for perfection, you always get closer to it, which is the genius of this placement. But learning the lesson of the right balance and to take time away to rest is crucial. Sometimes people with Saturn in Virgo have long-term ailments, physical ailments, mental ailments that they can't seem to heal, long-term injuries. Usually the stem of this is pushing their body too far. And this can even be pushing your mind too far. So it's not just your muscles. And this is all in the pursuit of perfection. Learning the lesson of when enough is enough is where your mastery will really come in. To be able to walk away when it's 95% and to feel good about that. Really hard to do, but that's what mastery of Saturn in Virgo looks like. It's not really being good at something that you guys have issue with. It's that you're too good at something and you need to just let up and go easy on yourself from time to time. This is a tweaker-like obsession. You could be working at a problem for 5 hours and not even realize how much time went by. Because once you get into something, it's really hard to stop until you're finished. You push past the pain. So this is definitely someone who could be obsessive compulsive, no doubt. Work might also be a love-hate until you find that mastery. Because working on long-term goals will just remind you of how you just don't measure up. Because your standards are, well, perfect. A little too perfect. You guys like a career that gives you a challenge and constant growth because you're such a good worker that you can get bored easily. Most jobs just aren't stimulating enough. You thrive on a good challenge, and if you are bored, you might have difficulty letting go of that job and moving on to something else, even if you are not happy. Because Virgo likes to stick with things and just stay. So really check in with yourself and see if you're actually enjoying what you're doing. Once you stop and start something new, which is very hard to do, but you will probably feel like you got room to grow, room to breathe, and everything's exciting again. You're known for overthinking things, especially big decisions, doubting yourself and your abilities about taking on big projects. But truth be told, no one else seems to understand your reasoning for doubting yourself because you are pretty impressive. You like to be in control. probably not somebody who really wants to work with somebody, like a partner hand in hand. You like your space, and you like, unless you have a lot of Libra in your chart somewhere else, you probably just like doing things the way you like to do it. And you especially don't like somebody forcing you to do all the details the exact same way that they want you to do it. Achilles is what I think of for Saturn and Virgo, because typically this is a great position for work and someone who's such a hard worker. But in some scenarios, like I said, if you burn yourself out, worry, hypochondria, and insecurity can be completely debilitating. Once you start worrying about something, it's really hard to stop. Centering your mind, body, and soul is totally where it's at for you. I've done a video about this, so make sure to watch it. It's called The Mystic Within, Mind, Body, and Soul. You have an incredible work engine working for you as long as it's not working against you. You were born to be productive. It's just who you are. When you set your mind to something, it is a sight to behold. Holistic health and therapy are some of the things that you can turn to be your secret weapon, to keep those energies for your long-term success. It's never the work that holds you back, it's always the imperfections, the lack of control, the meaninglessness, or the overexhaustion. You also really want to be not necessarily praised, but you want to be respected, and you want people to know your value. And if they don't, if they take you for granted, after all that self-sacrifice, it is just gut-wrenching. Once you start a habit, it's really hard to stop, and that goes for good or bad. So addictions, if you have this placement, are just really hard to shake, harder than anyone else. So I definitely recommend getting some help through a group or some assistance, because doing it on your own could be really difficult. That change of routine, you guys like that routine. Early on in life, perfectionism might have been a curse in some way. But as you master it, it will become your strength. With the right environment, the right mindset, your work and your perfectionism will be unparalleled. Hope you guys enjoyed my take on Saturn in Virgo. Come back for the next video.